really. But there is a gate.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome to the Regulatory and Licensing Committee meeting on Thursday, the 19th of June 2025. I'm going to hand over to Christine at this point, our committee clerk, to run through apologies.
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Yates, who is the chair. So this evening we are being chaired by the vice chair, Councillor Mears. We've also had apologies from Councillor Breger.
Moving on to item 2 on the agenda. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest?
I think I might have to declare an interest, with my wife being the Borough Secretary on street collections.
Yeah.
Do you want me to leave the room when the time comes? Yeah. Can I stay? Oh, thanks very much. Decent of you.
Right, moving on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask for a proposer and a seconder for those minutes? We're moving on. It's a very fast pace through this meeting. Item 4, we're going to have a verbal update on the taxi enforcement activity. I'm just going to hand over to our Officer James for that review.
Thanks, Chair. Before I start, I should welcome Councillor Mears to the committee and Councillor Warfield. Clearly, you've gone right in at the deep end, chairing your first meeting of the Regulatory and Licensing Committee, so a big welcome. And also a big thanks to Councillor Evans for having chaired the committee over the last year. I speak on behalf of the officers. The support and the thanks that you've shown them has really been appreciated. So thank you. Okay, so taxi enforcement, the committee will remember that we introduced a new taxi policy from the 1st of April this year. When that was going through the committee process, this committee asked that we bring a verbal update to the committee meetings once the policy is in force around what enforcement activity has taken place. So the data I'll go through now is obviously from the 1st of April when the new policy came into effect. From the 1st of April, we had a sort of transition period. We obviously want to work in partnership with the drivers, the vehicles and the operators that we license. And therefore, there was a period of time where we took a soft touch approach to enforcement. Since then, when we've sort of fully embraced the new policy and the enforcement powers that officers now have at the roadside, we've done a number of checks. Some of those have been targeted taxi enforcement operations. Some have been multi-agency traffic operations that have involved the police or the DVSA. And some have been just done alongside routine work. So, for example, a taxi was checked today while some officers were at that location doing something else, and there was a taxi there, so it was checked. Whilst we're doing those operations, we do also spend some time policing the private hire vehicles that are licensed by other councils that operate within our district. Our powers to do that are limited. We can't enforce the conditions of their licence, as the committee will know, but where we suspect they may be committing an offence such as plying for hire, we can deal with that. So we do that alongside the operations we do in terms of our own licensed drivers, vehicles and operators. And our own licensed people are very supportive of that. Clearly, we need to be seen to be doing something about the vehicles and the drivers that come in from outside Lichfield. So onto the data. Since the 1st of April, we have conducted roadside checks on 34 vehicles and 34 drivers. In terms of compliance, 71% of them were found to be compliant, so no problems whatsoever. 12% we've recorded as having been given advice for minor breaches, and 15% given a warning for what we've called a moderate breach. In terms of the advice and the warnings, I've got a list of what they were for. The majority were for not wearing their driver's badge. So a requirement of the licence is that they wear their identification badge so that passengers can see this person has a licence and the person's face matches the image on the badge. The other breaches were unable to provide proof of insurance at the roadside, having a defective meter light, the rear plate not fitted to the vehicle, not having the required smoke-free signs, and for having a defective roof light. So the apparatus was on the roof but didn't light up when it should do. In terms of how we've dealt with them, where there's been a problem with the vehicle, they've been required to return the same day or within 2 days and prove that they've rectified the defect, or provide proof by email. So an example would be the insurance. So obviously the person was able to find the insurance document and email us a copy, and that's resolved those issues. There was 3% of vehicles, which is one vehicle, that was suspended. The reason for the suspension was the driver was aware that a taxi enforcement operation was taking place. When the officer approached the vehicle, the driver appeared to make off, and potentially could have come into contact with the officer. And when the officer was alongside the driver, he was found to be on his mobile phone at the time he drove off. So his licence was suspended for a short period of time. So that's the summary of enforcement activity since the 1st of April. If the committee wishes us to, at the next committee meeting, we'll provide an update on activity between now and the next committee meeting. But that's that verbal update complete, unless there's any questions.
Has anybody got any questions?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent report, and it's really, really important that what you're doing is kept up to date. And I think it's good that we do actually see what you are doing, because if we ever get asked a question, we know the answer. And I do think that these enforcement officers are doing a brilliant job, because taxis are very, for some people, it's very difficult for some people to go in taxis, particularly with young people and those people that are not protected in the same way. So thank you for what you've done. And may you be able to continue to do it, because it is important.
Quick one, the one that was stopped on the mobile phone, have they been reported for process or?
No, not to the police, no. So in terms of their licence, we can take action against them on the balance of probabilities. The question is whether it met the threshold to be to prove an offence beyond a reasonable doubt. So by dealing with it through the licence, we felt that was sufficient. Whether the police would do anything on the evidence we had secondhand, yeah. But certainly, if we had, for certain offences, or certain occasions, we will have the police with us, is the first thing. On that occasion, we didn't. If there are, as you know, in the past where we've had issues with drivers and vehicles, the police have very much been involved.
Okay, thank you.
Ask any more questions? Thank you. Thank you. If we can just note, James, thank you very much for your report.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the Food Safety Delivery Plan 2024-25 at performance review. I'll hand over to our officer Lorraine, who will.
Thanks, Liz. As you're aware, we came to committee in February to present the food service delivery plan for this year, but this is the review on last year for your information and note. So just to recap for you, obviously the delivery of our food service helps protect and improve the public health of those living and visiting our district, but also supports our new and existing businesses to comply with legal requirements and also prosperous trading conditions. So the team is responsible for delivering all of our authorities' food safety service to just under 1,000 businesses, food businesses within the district. So planning workloads and monitoring performance is a key factor really in delivering an efficient food service, and also a requirement of the FSA, our monitoring body, the Food Standards Agency. We entered into 24-25 with a bit of a backlog of inspections in categories B to E. Commitment from the team and importantly extra resource has allowed us now to recover from that backlog. Our key performance indicator, which is percentage of due Cat A's and to A to D and new businesses, food hygiene inspections completed, rose from 75% in Q1 to 86% across Q2 and 3, and up to 96% by the end of Q4. As you'll appreciate, we finished the year down only 4%. In actual numbers, what this translates to is that we entered the year with 67 premises overdue across the categories, but we are down now to 24 at the end of the year. I would also add that the premises that remained outstanding, that 4%, was down to either restricted access, such as weekend or late evening openings, or seasonal activities, which meant it wasn't actually physically possible to carry out the inspection within that time. They have now all been inspected within the first quarter of 25 to 26. In terms of our rating profile, it's interesting to note that 67% of premises, the rating awarding on inspection remained unchanged from their last inspection, with 20% of establishments their rating improved, and 13% of premises their rating went down. Now, this doesn't wholly relate to last year's figures, because it's not all premises will be inspected in a 12-month period due to their inspection rating frequency, but it at least gives you an indication of the standards across our district and demonstrates really that premises have generally been shown to either maintain or be improving, with only a small proportion going down. And I think that also demonstrates the efforts that we have as a team in achieving results with our local businesses. Where action has been needed, we've taken that action. We've served 6 improvement notices where required. Obviously, enforcement is a proportionate approach. In the first instance, we would always give advice, but there are cases, obviously, when that's not been heeded to, or the condition itself renders that not applicable, so a notice will be served. Generally, at the end of March, that we had 97% of premises broadly compliant. That's those achieving a rating of 3 or better, which is higher than the West Mids at 95 and the national average of 96. We have had an increase in the number of premises applying for a re-rating inspection. So this is those premises that haven't achieved the top rating, they've made improvements, and then they request for a re-rating inspection. In all of those re-rating inspections, an improvement to the rating was achieved. We carried out 22 last year in the 24-25 period, which is an increase from 15 on the previous year of 23-24. Number of food complaints received and investigated remained relatively stable compared to other years, together with the number of infectious diseases. It is important that we really continue to work to maintain this realignment with the inspection programme and deliver all of our functions to help support local businesses and to protect members of the public. And as I said previously, the plan for this year was presented to the committee, and provided we have no change in capacity, we are currently on track to deliver against this current plan.
Thank you. Councillor Salter.
Yes, thank you. Excellent report. And can I say pages 9 to 15, the actual announcements, if you like, that gave some fascinating and very pleasing statistics. To be commended, the work of the teams is to be highly commended, obviously. But my question really is, how well publicised are these statistics that show the tremendous work that Lichfield does to protect its community?
It's something we're looking to improve, and in fact in the last 2 months we have now started to do a press release and on social media the ratings that have been achieved that month, to obviously support and back our local businesses that are achieving so well, and obviously to highlight to the public that it is publicly available information so they can make an informed decision when they're out and about.
Excellent. Hopefully the same will apply to James' teams in respect of the taxi checks and all that goes with it, and the various other, get the message out there. Lichfield are working hard to protect its community, and
I think that's a
great job at it. Yeah.
Sir Evans.
Yeah, again, I think an excellent report, and it is important, and I'm glad that we've now got this FTE post filled, because that was important for you, that you've got an adequate team to actually do everything you've got to do, which is excessive. But can I just ask a question on the background on page 5, 3.4? It says we're talking about the policy, which could be within 12 to 24 months, about cosmetic treatments. And obviously that is an ongoing thing because more and more cosmetic treatments are coming on board. So will there have to be CPD for the officers involved? And is that training, is it likely that we've got this policy soon with, because these things are going on now?
No, that's right. It does account for quite a large proportion of our work in health and safety aspect. The licensing that's being proposed is still not yet confirmed. So we're almost in a little bit of a limbo period. Currently, we work under a registration scheme, which is some very outdated legislation. And as the sector itself is almost, the treatments now have outspun that legislation. So we're working with old pieces of legislation. So we are looking at hopefully running a project in the summer to try and identify premises that are likely to fall under the new licensing. But as you quite rightly point out, that is extra resource. But at the moment, it's hard to quantify until we know the actual details of the scheme it will set out.
Yeah, because we've heard on social media, etc., that things do go wrong with Botox and various other things. I can't imagine wanting to put myself through anything like that. I'm far too old, but I just think that we've really got to keep an eye on these things because it is important.
No, definitely, for sure. I think what we need to do as well, perhaps as part of the project we're looking at doing, is highlighting we are that point of contact, because I think at the moment we are quite aware and we do a bit of surveillance in terms of the premises that are operating in the district. But what people don't know is if things have gone wrong or they have experienced issues, that we are the people to contact. A lot of instances they'll go to their local doctors or even A&E if necessary. So it's almost closing that loop and getting the people coming back to us so that we're actually made aware of it.
And do doctors refer to you at any time? Have they done that?
No, unfortunately not.
So when you've actually got this policy in place, will doctors, etc., be made aware that they should come to you?
I think it's a case of making people more aware of who does what. Obviously, any medical concerns, quite rightly, you know, go to the GP. But in terms of actually the standards that are in these premises, that falls to us under our health and safety requirements. But it's certainly an area that we have seen exploding, we're well aware of. Is obviously we really would welcome the licensing regime coming in, or some confirmation of where we are going with it, because at the moment the treatments that are out there don't currently we aren't able to get control over them under the current regime.
Thank you. Can I go on to the actual policy which I've read? Can I ask a question in there? On 3.1.6, 3 paragraphs from the bottom, it talks about a change, and it says the cost is £175, and it says in brackets it says £200 from April 24. Does that not need correcting, that if it's April 24 it came into place, therefore you need to remove the 175 and just have the £200? I'm not asking for an answer now because that's got to be looked at, but that is one thing that
I can check.
I picked up. And when we're talking about allergen awareness as well, that again is a thing that has increased lately with people being aware of various allergens. So do you get many inquiries about it, or are there many problems with it?
Yes, we do. It's covered as part of every routine food hygiene inspection. It should form the part, allergen management should form the part of any food safety management system in place within a business. Get looked at. We do have complaints, and we do have a memorandum of understanding between us and Trading Standards, because there is dual enforcement. Trading Standards will have a signposting and any kind of claims or that side of thing. We will pick up when there's any cross-contamination or training, actual physical handling within the premises itself. So they will be declared as part of our complaints received. If people have been out and experienced problems, we would deal with it as a food complaint. It will be figures.
Thank you. The other point I was going to make was on page 19, that in areas for improvement, that you now want to increase the formal enforcement sanctions for poorly performing businesses, and that is really good. I think that that is important for people, both visitors and residents of the district. You just seem to be on top of it all, and so well done.
Councillor Lane?
I have a few questions. So when in the PowerPoint presentation, when you mentioned Burntwood and Litchfield, it does include the rurals as well, just to confirm the villages.
Yes.
Okay, and then the food ratings, is there a number where we push for them to aim? I know it could be any, but is there a number that we like them to achieve?
Yeah, a national guideline that lots of local authorities use to benchmark across is the broadly compliant, which is 3 or above. We do have quite a high level of performing premises. Obviously, we tend to look and try and get them much higher than that. But that's the national kind of benchmark level that normally gets looked at.
And one more question, do we have numbers in regard, past numbers for modern slavery, where you mentioned?
No.
Right.
It's not currently a statistic we report on. Obviously, we would action any report that gets sent through to us, and I think in most of the instances it have been when we've been out on routine inspections, it'll be circumstances that we've come across, and then we've obviously contacted our partner organisations to follow up and rectify matters.
Because I'm just thinking it'd be really interesting to see the numbers in the area or which parts of the district.
We could certainly start to look at that. It's not something currently that we have or that we monitor.
Councillor Shepherd?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great the amount of enforcement that happens. I just wondered in relation to the ratings and the fact that it's not compulsory to put the ratings displayed. Do we hand out 5-star ratings to those people who get it and ask them to display those so that everyone else is aware that those that aren't displaying it haven't scored a 5-star? Just a thought. I'm not suggesting that when they score lower, they commit an offence for leaving it in the window, but it might be a way to encourage everybody towards the 5-star in the first place. That was the first point. The second one is I'm interested to know how the street trading, I know this is a report on last year, how the street trading, the food festivals went by going through a central agent, and did they manage to actually comply with the rules that they were set? And do we have any successes or failures at any venues? And my last one is, at what point does the food hygiene rating finish? Because with a lot of food delivered to homes, is it when it leaves the shop or is it when it's delivered to the home? The reason I ask is because I saw a delivery driver drop a pizza face down on the floor in the high street, pick it back up, put it in the box, get onto his Uber. Now, whose responsibility is it to ensure the hygiene of the food is correct on delivery as opposed to as it leaves the shop? My follow-up little bit on that bit is, these guys can't all pedal fast without moving their legs. So you're looking, you're supposed to be able to pedal, otherwise it's a motorbike. And if it's a motorbike, are we checking business insurances? I'll leave you with that.
First point, shall I cover that one? That was about the rating, isn't it? We actively encourage everybody to display their rating, and we would fully support a mandatory scheme for display. It was unfortunately a strand that got dropped by the FSA, but there is a push from all local authorities to get that as mandatory. And as we can only encourage, and it's hoped that even our social media going out there, that the higher rated premises will generally want to display their rating.
I just wonder if we handed them the sticker.
Yeah, we do. That is part. Yes, that's part of the scheme. We give everybody a sticker, irrespective of their rating. But obviously, generally, the higher ratings will more likely display it than not. It should only ever be the last rating that gets displayed. They should only one rating will ever be current at any one time. So if you see a window full of 3, it's only ever the last one that is the right one. We would always ask for the others to be removed. Your second point was about street trading.
Yeah, the food festivals.
Well,
How
did you?
I would say since the change came in where we issue the consent to the organiser rather than each individual trader, I'd say the levels of compliance have remained the same. So the issues we used to see, we still see. The good examples we used to see, we still see as well. There is work to be done, and we've started sort of a lessons identified process from the some of the recent events that have taken place, because yes, there's some licensing issues, environmental health issues, but there's also event management issues, policing issues and everything else. So, I mean, we obviously want standards to improve. In terms of the food element, the committee will remember that we continued with our policy of only having 4s or those rated 4 or 5 trade. So that's still in force. One change that we did make was that they now have to display their rating. So when officers work at these events, that's obviously one of the checks that they undertake. But we expect the event organiser as the consent holder to be doing those checks before we get there. So overall, standards and compliance are the same. The big difference is the huge burden that was on the organisers, the traders and the council has gone. And instead of processing, I think we used to process something like 700 applications a year. We're now processing something like 30. So that admin time has been shifted into actually having officers at these events to keep people safe.
Drivers, shall I answer that question for you? It depends. If it's the company's own delivery driver, it would form part of that business. If they're using a food aggregator, so that's your Just Eat, your Delivery, your Uber Eats, they are a different entity, and that would not be part of the fixed premises rating. They are separate. So if we received a complaint such as the one you mentioned, circumstance, we would follow that up with the delivery company separately.
So there's no regulation at all for the companies that deliver outside of their own delivery people?
Well, they don't have a rating because the brand standard, remember, not all premises receive a food hygiene rating because that's the brand standard. We inspect up to 1,000 premises on our database, but only 800 of those are, or 850, I think, are published. You get exempt, sensitive, or other ones. So the delivery drivers are not classed as a displayable rating. But we have them on our system and we will contact them and we deal with them and we inspect them, but they don't actually have a food hygiene rating. That's not to say they don't have a risk rating. It's just not a published display under the brand standard.
Not sure where that's taken me, but thank you. And just in relation to the insurances, and we do know, is that down to police to do checks for stuff like that? We don't look at any of our delivery people and the style of bikes they're delivering on business.
The only we're aware there are problems here, as there are nationally, and it's funny because a lot of this comes back to legislation just not keeping up with the way things have changed, whether it's the cosmetic stuff we've talked about, displaying food ratings, or the fact that most people now get their food takeaways delivered by one of the aggregators that Lorraine's mentioned. In terms of the issues we have, particularly in the city centre, and you've mentioned these bicycles that seem to move without pedalling, we get complaints about that in terms of noise, in terms of where they congregate, litter, urinating. The powers to deal with it are difficult. One option could be a PSPO, and we have some form of PSPO if we considered it to be a significant problem. But aside from that, it by and large, in terms of the vehicles they're using, it is the police.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Salter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Following up really again on the hygiene ratings, and I love Jamie's suggestion of compliance by shame almost. Yeah, we can't, well, or can we? Is there a means of a bylaw or anything where we can enforce display? Probably not. I don't know that you looked into the feasibilities of that. But what I did want to check or appreciate of is the fact that if someone wanted to check on the website, whether the probably be ours rather than the cafe or restaurant's own website, that the food ratings, whatever they might be, are published on the website.
All ratings after the appeal period is public information, and they're all published on the Food Standards Agency website. The scheme is not our scheme, it is a national scheme operated by the Food Standards Agency, which is obviously where it's difficult for us to make the display mandatory unless there's obviously change from the Food Standards Agency themselves to enforce that.
Councillor Hill?
Curiosity, really. When you say that 3 is like an average or whatever, what are they falling short on that stops them from getting 5?
Could be very broad. I think what we're saying is when they're getting the 3, they are generally okay on all aspects. When you rate a premises, the rating is given on 3 separate areas. So that's the management, evidence in management, their actual practices and procedures. That's physically, how do they do stuff? Watching them, you think how food's stored and things like that. And it's the structure, how clean, tidy is it? Is it in good order and repair? So when they get a 3, they are achieving an average score in all those 3 sections. Where their ratings start to get affected is if you have a poor area in one of those 3, that can then start to drag them down. But at 3, they're generally okay in those 3 areas.
So I should feel relatively safe to be able to eat at an establishment that has 3 and not have the worry that I might get food poisoning or anything else at all like that. Would that be safe to say?
That's what the national benchmark is. Obviously, what I'd say is the higher the rating.
Safe for you. Thank you.
There were a couple of 1 stars in the last report, I believe, mainly on technical issues like paperwork and the lack of 2 dividing doors or something like that. Have those been remedied?
It's rated 2 or below. If they are rated 2 or below, they have to have, as part of our procedures, a revisit, at which point we will always make sure that any imminent risk or any defects like that are remedied. That won't necessarily change their rating, but we would never walk away and leave things unchanged.
Okay.
Councillor Salter?
That basically answers my question on that. But just while we're on that, it does sound from your categories inspection that their star rating can be reduced simply because they've got bad bookwork, bad bookkeeping, like that. Is that the case?
It can do, but that forms a part of any successful food business, is having a food safety management system in place, in that they need to understand what all the risks are. It's a balance of looking at where the level of risk is. There is a requirement to have it. It's part of the legislation. It's been in place now for nearly 20 years. The point of it is they are supposed to examine all aspects of their food business, identify where their risks are, and then put controls in place to manage them. They may well, by just experience or luck, monitor those themselves without the food system in place. But unfortunately, it is a legal requirement, so there's no way around that.
But it's not just about food and cleanliness, is the bottom line.
So add to that, I would say I think people sometimes dismiss the record keeping elements as not as important as the other elements, but in terms of record keeping, just 2 examples. One would be temperature checks. So, you know, it's really quite important that if they're serving hot food, it's cooked to the correct temperature. And you know, the range team will know when they go in, if there's no records to say they're checking, or you become an expert in when they're making the records up, all in the same pen, by the same person for the last month. You know, that's quite important stuff. Another example would be when they do an inspection and they find some meat in a fridge. The officer should be able to say, where's this from? And when they can't say where they bought it from, there's no traceability. And with the amount of illegal imports we know are coming into the country now, you know that falls under record keeping. We're not talking about you know, little bits of admin and things like that. It really can be quite significant things.
Just one more, just in relation to the national food hygiene standards, is it worth having a link within the district council that takes you to that? Because certainly since I've been on this, if I go out and eat now, I look at the food hygiene rating before I go out, and it's tricky. It would be handy if people initially look to the Lichfield District Council, but obviously it's not there. And then you go nationally and you have to put postcodes in and what have you. But I just wondered if just the link within our system to take someone to the right site might, because then we don't have to keep it up to date. We just have to have the link.
Yeah, no, we can do that because on the FSA website, you can just search for Lichfield District Council or premises within. So we could certainly look at adding that onto the front page of our survey.
Thank you.
The monthly social media release that we're now doing, the link that's included with that takes you to the Lichfield page on the Food Standards Agency website. So that we're already doing it there.
Okay.
I'm surprised it's not already on our website.
I just looked at food hygiene and
yeah, it's our website is very good, but not perfect.
agreed, it's very good. It may well be there somewhere, just I put the wrong word in.
We'll make it more visible. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. James, thank you, and Lorraine, thank you very much for that. It's incredible the amount of work that you're both putting into this, and the statistics on the report are outstanding. Thank you. Before we move on, one last question. Are there any more questions on this report from Lorraine? Thank you. Right, we'll make the report and move on. Thank you. So item number 6 is the charitable collections policy. And I'll hand over to James to give us an update on that.
Chair, I'm in the right page. So the committee will have seen we have prepared a draft charitable collections policy. We currently have a policy that this committee adopted in 2019. So it's not particularly something new. It's presented, I hope, in a much better way, in language that's easier to understand. And the reason for that is, once again, we're faced with some legislation that regulates this that's 100 years old and by and large fairly useless. It's not something that's optional for us to do. We have to regulate charitable collections, and what we hope through this policy is for people that are organising charitable collections, it makes it easier for them to understand what they need to do to make things go right. We regulate 2 different kinds of collections: street collections, which are the ones you'd see in the city centre. The law really only covers those shaking tins and collecting cash. It doesn't account for people taking things like direct debit or credit card payments. And then the other form is house-to-house collection. So that's people going from home to home, business to business, collecting money or donations. So it includes things like clothing, donations. We don't charge for any of this. So, you know, we obviously want to support both charities and organisations that are not charities, but you know, are doing charitable work. And there's some of the checks that we do when either a permit or a licence is applied for. So the reason we want to regulate this is we want this activity to take place in Lichfield, particularly where it's supporting people who live in Lichfield. But we obviously want them to be genuine charitable causes. So that's something that we check. We also don't want the city centre swamped with people asking for donations. So we have a method currently where we can put some control over that to limit numbers and make sure everybody has a fair chance. So the policy, I won't go through it. I'm sure the committee have read it. It is fairly similar to what we currently have, but as I said, hopefully worded in a better way. What we're hoping is there is new legislation that is in the Charities Act 2006. So, you know, we're putting a lot of hope in this one day coming into force, although it is 19 years late, which would replace this legislation. But currently it's just sitting there waiting for somebody to bring it in. But until then, we've done a new policy, which is before the committee. We're asking the committee to consider it and to make a recommendation to the cabinet member whether it should be approved or not.
Councillor Salter.
Sorry, it's me again. I was horrified to read on page 18 at 3.6 that the majority clothing recycling bins across the districts have no connection to any charitable cause. What's going on? What can we do about it?
If you scratch away at the surface, which is what we do every day, there's a lot of bad things going on.
The majority, that's, you know.
So we were just talking about this today because this, you know, this is really a bit of proactive work, a project almost that we just want to get on top of. So the plan for these is we will get the landowners' consent to remove them. So by and large, they just put on private land without anybody's permission. The ones on the highway aren't a problem. We can get rid of them. The ones on council land, the same. It's the ones on Tesco car parks and places like that. So once we've got consent from the landowner, you know, once we've told them what's actually going on, then our plan is to remove them all and they'll all be taken away. We have offered them to genuine charities, but the response that we've had is they just have too many of their own banks and they have their own design of banks and therefore they wouldn't want to take these on.
You're not beholden on the landowner, i.e. Tesco, to ensure that the people who are putting these banks on their premises are legitimate.
They turn up in the middle of the night, just drop it off and drive off. Yeah. And I think
are you called in by the manager of the Tesco branch?
No, they don't tell them. They just turn up and drop the claim.
No, when the manager arrives on the next morning and he sees that on his car park, does he contact you to say?
We have had some in the past. We have had some people report, you know, can you help with this? It's turned up. I think what you're pointing towards is obviously the landowner could remove them if they wanted to, but genuinely, I think most of them don't realise that there's no link to any charitable cause, and there's nobody to contact. There's no phone number or anything on the bank that works. So as some other councils have done, our plan is just to remove them. Our concern is, whilst people are being duped into giving donations to those banks, they're not giving them to genuine causes. And you know, from what we understand, this is feeding other criminal activity. The value of clothing and rags is surprisingly high when you compare it to things like scrap metal. But that is a bit of an aside to house collections and street collections.
Oh, yes.
An example of what is going on and what could go on if we don't you know, regulate what goes on with collections as well.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the recycling bins for clothing because I appreciate the fact you're saying it is an aside from what you're saying about the things, but when you are actually going to remove them, how are you going to notify the public of that? Because people will still come along as you see them in whatever these lay-bys or on Morrison's car park, for instance, and sometimes I've seen the Salvation Army lorry there, I have to say, but people are not going to be aware that this is happening, and it is shocking, really, that it is happening. But
so we plan to do some publicity around it. We think it's a good news story. It shows that we're supporting genuine charities. That's when people to donate. I think our advice would be to people is to make donations at a shop. You know, it's generally the way to guarantee the people you're giving the donation to are genuine. So yeah, we plan to do, I mean, we'll remove them probably in a single day, and then we'll get some photographs and do some publicity around that.
Yeah, and as the general collections that you're talking about, people are in, the charities themselves are not getting the amounts that they used to get because of people's situations. So it is important that it is done as you have put in the report, because people do want to, there are members of the public that want to donate to these organisations, and so many of them are very, very worthy causes. So the fact that it's regulated as it is really important.
We've had a similar thing with well, one particular individual who travels here from somewhere up north, and he stands in the city centre, and he's quite forceful when he approaches people, and the words he says are suicide awareness and something else. I can't remember exactly, but he just says about 4 words. He gets right up in people's faces with a wristband, and he says suicide awareness, and people are duped into paying a couple of quid for these wristbands, and there is no link whatsoever to any charitable cause. All the money is going in his pocket. It's very difficult for us to deal with it. The most effective way that we found to deal with it is when we get a complaint about it, we'll send an officer out with a body camera who stands next to him, and every time he approaches somebody and they're about to put their hand in the pocket, the officer tells the person, just letting you know this is nothing to do with the charity, and then they put their money back in their pocket, and then the guy gets in his car and goes home. You know, that's the kind of things that we're having to do. And you know, I spoke to somebody on one occasion, and the lady I told, she was just about to hand over £5, very upset that she'd been duped by this person who was purporting to be genuine and appeared to be doing a good thing. So yeah, anything that we can do to raise awareness of these bad things that go on, I think is good.
What can the police do about that, or what do they do about that?
So technically, because he's selling stuff, he either needs a street trading consent, or he needs a peddler's certificate. For something on that scale, generally they'd have a peddler's certificate, and believe it or not, some of them do. The issue is the two issues are they need to keep moving when they're not making a sale, which is a minor thing really, but it's the potential fraud element that they're purporting to be supporting a charity when in fact they're not. But they're, you know, again, these are organised gangs that are doing this. There's another group that haven't come here, fortunately, but they basically purport to be veterans and raising money for veterans charities, and again, it's all going in their pockets. So there's a lot that goes on that people. I think society has become very trusting that the council are checking these things or the government are checking these things, and we do our best, but people do have to take some responsibility and do their own research and make their own minds up.
But if they're coming back time and time again, can they be prosecuted for that?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, the approach we've taken has been effective, and I don't think we've seen the individual convention for a long time now. Our stance is always, let's just move them on to another district. Unfortunately, we're not going to get rid of this stuff, but we can do a really good job in Lichfield and make them go elsewhere. That's the situation we're in.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, are there any checks on the people who drive around, push a plastic bag through your door and ask you to fill it for 2 days' time and put it out? Because, we don't know whether they're actually collecting for a charity, and if they are, how much of the money that they might goes to charity.
So it is covered by this. They should have a house-to-house collection licence. As you know, we don't drive around looking for these people doing these things. We rely on people reporting it to us. And again, I think the majority of the population just trust that it's genuine. The one way you can check is when you get the bag, read all the small prints. And believe it or not, some of them are very honest and they don't even claim to have any link to a charitable cause. Another scam that we're aware of is when a genuine charity is doing this. So I don't know, let's a cancer charity, for example, and they've gone to an area and distributed bags. We're aware of it. They've got a license. The criminal element will find out, and on the day of the bag collection, 1 hour before the cancer charity, they go around and take all the bags.
No.
Three very quick ones, actually. So is it possible to name and shame them on the website?
We've
Say beware of these people that they're operating within Lichfield.
So with the individual selling the wristbands, we have done that. We've put something out on social media on the days that he's been there to tell people there's a guy in the city centre doing this. Don't give him your money. I mean, one reason we use body cameras is where people fail to give us their name and address. Then we've obviously got an image of them, and there are circumstances where we would release that image and ask people to tell us who it is. We've done that for fly tippers. We've caught them on CCTV, and again, we can do it in these situations as well.
The other one is that there's been times when we've had stuff that we want to give to charity, but to actually get to a charity shop, to be able to park or to be able to get there with a lot of stuff is really inconvenient, or we just can't get there. And so the bins, or whatever we want to call them, were an ideal way of being able to dispose of. I don't know what the solution is. The question is, could we let people know via social media where the locations of legitimate sites are, perhaps?
I shall write that down. I'm sure there's some mechanism. I was going to suggest, and this is nothing to do with me, so I can't be certain, but I'm fairly confident for the charity shops in the city centre, if people wanted to donate there, they are allowed to drive into the pedestrian zone to do so. So hopefully that's the pedestrian zone is not deterring people from doing that. There's obviously other charity shops that are not in the city centre as well. The problem with the banks is I mean, a good example is the fire station. The fire station has a bank there for the firefighters charity. It's probably always going to be there. So somewhere like that would be a great place for people to go. There's parking. They know it's a genuine cause. If it's a cause they want to support, then that would, something like that would be good. So we could look at that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Lang.
You mentioned about inspecting collections when someone complains. Do you also do random inspections as well?
No, we only, with this, we want it to be self-regulating. There's a couple of times where we've had one charity complain about another charity, so they've somehow ended up collecting at the same time. And that'll always be because one's not followed the rules and done things properly. By and large, where we can manage that and allow them to both continue, we will. But if for example, one was not a genuine charity, then we'd ask them to leave. But there are set days where things like direct debit collections can be done. We don't do any proactive work around that. We would only respond if we got a complaint and if we had somebody available to go and deal with it. Equally, with the clothing collections, by the time somebody's reported it to us, the van that's doing it could be anywhere. So it would be something we deal with afterwards. We'd ask the person to provide us a copy of photos of the bags they've been given, and we could see what we could follow up with that. But in terms of what we do in terms of licensing, this is at the lower end of the scale, and as I said, we want it to be self-regulating.
The question. So we mentioned about direct debits. So there are lots of donations that way you just pay by card, because it's not everyone has the cash. Sometimes it could be people on the streets or in the shops. So do you also look at those, if they're in the shop, and sometimes when you pay it till they say, "Oh, donate to this charity," on a card machine, do you regulate that? Do you check on those items as well?
So where it's in a shop, obviously the business should be doing checks as well. I would hope that legitimate businesses would only allow legitimate charitable causes to collect in their premises. In terms of the direct debit collection, so there is
pay, I mean, just not direct debit, but just card payments. Sometimes you have
Yeah.
people on the streets, they just say, and they just,
So there is like it's in the report, I can't remember what it's called, but there is a national body that helps us to regulate that. So we have a contract effectively with them that specifies when their members will collect and when they won't collect. So we have a limit in the city centre. We have set days when they can collect and set areas as well. So again, that just helps prevent the city centre being flooded by this. But the card payments and the direct debit payments, the way the law is currently written, falls outside the scope of the law. Hence, we've got that agreement with the national body. I'm looking at the policy for the name of it, which does actually work. It is quite effective, and we don't genuinely have problems with that. Obviously, with card payments and direct debit payments, if there were a criminal element to it, it would be very easy to trace them through the bank accounts that they have to have. With cash, which is what the law does seek to regulate, all that can disappear. And just simple things like the buckets that they use have to be sealed. So the actual collectors who are taking the money, by having the seals on the buckets, it gives us some confidence that when they hand the bucket over to the manager or whoever, the seal is still there and they've not helped themselves to some of the money. But with the card payments and the direct debits, because there's always a bank account involved, I think that helps keep out the criminal element.
Let me just ask a quick question there. So at petrol stations and at McDonald's, when you go to pay, often there's a little, would you like to donate 40p to charity, or do you want to make the balance up to £10 and donate that to charity? Is there any regulation for that?
So it falls outside the scope of this, and it would fall under the guidance through this national body, the fundraisers code, let's call it that for now. And the things we'd expect to see on one of those tins is if it's a registered charity, the charity number, that it clearly displays the name of the charity or the charitable organisation. And again, the petrol station or the shop that's allowing it, they should be doing their own checks as well. I'm not aware that there's, other than the theft of them, I'm not aware that there's any scams going on with that. The ones I see and the stories I hear about are genuine charities, the Poppy Appeal being one of the biggest ones. And it's worth mentioning as well that the big charities like the Royal British Legion are, for the street collections, they have a separate process where they have national consent essentially. So they're allowed, because of the size of them, clearly they wouldn't want to be applying to several hundred councils every November, so they're allowed to crack on, which again I think is a good thing.
Councillor Ashton.
Still on the subject of random villainy, if an organisation applies for a licence, you do your due diligence, they come along, they collect the money, and then there's silence, you don't get your return. Obviously you can ban them from applying again, but do you have contact with other councils who are also granting licences to say, oh well, these people also didn't return, so you raise your suspicions? Would you then feel you could report that to the police?
Absolutely. So we share intelligence with other councils anyway.
Right.
We have a West Midlands based forum for doing that, and a national forum that's and there's a great example in terms of taxis and how we share that, because clearly that's a big issue.
So you can spot the dodgy operators.
Yes, yeah, and the main thing, as you've said, would be they won't be coming back to Lichfield.
Right. And if they've got a charity number, then you'd report them to Charities Commission.
Yes, yeah, and some completely unrelated to this, but there have been some examples recently where, whether they've got a charity number or not, we have done our best to encourage the Charity Commission to do something about it. So both where an organisation is purporting to be a charity, and is way over the threshold for having to register as a charity, but isn't. There have been cases where we've reported that. We've not seen any action in the cases that we've reported. But again, we don't know the caseload the Charity Commission has, or you know where that is on the scale.
There's ones you've reported, but other people may have reported the same thing.
Yes, yeah.
Councillor Salter?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Two parts really. So this, and I'm back to the clothing bins. One is perhaps a suggestion of a way forward. The other is a question directly. First one, and you mentioning that your colleague with the camera standing next to the wristband seller threw the idea into my head. Logistically, when you discover an unlawful container or illegal container, however you want to put it, logistically to arrange collection, etc., is going to take time and cost. And in the meantime, people are still putting clothes in. Is there a way that the district council can put an official notice on it, a sticker, and perhaps even seal because there's doors on them, put a cable tie or whatever to seal them to stop potential donors putting anything in? So that's one part. The second part is when you do manage to collect them, gather them together, they are undoubtedly containing quite a considerable amount of material. Do we have a preferred charity that goes to, or what happens to it?
So two bits, I guess, to that question. In terms of removing them, we the way that we intend to do it, there'll be no cost to the council or the taxpayer. The contractor that will remove them, and we're satisfied they're genuine and everything else, their costs will be covered by keeping the bank and the contents of the bank. So that's the way that we're currently planning to do it. Another option would be, as you've said, for the council to pay for the removal and then offer up the contents to a genuine charity. Yeah, our ideal option would be to ring a genuine charity, say, look, here's 10 bids, go and pick them up and they're yours. But we've not found any charities that are willing to do that. And then the second part, just remind me what that was.
Well, it was basically sealing the door on it and putting a sticker, Lichfield official sticker on, saying, please do not use this. It's not lawful. It's not legitimate.
So I think that would be a great idea. The reason that we're being dissuaded from doing that is because we don't want to tip the gangs off that are behind it, that we're going to be removing it. So we don't know when they empty them. We don't know when they're delivered. We don't know what their schedules are.
Yeah.
The fear is if we put something like that on, it will disappear and reappear somewhere else. So we'll just move the problem onto the next car park. We'd rather hit them and see the bins disappear. We think that will dissuade them from coming back to Lichfield, because the risk will be they'll put a bin out and it will be gone.
Can I ask if anybody has any further questions?
What's the difference between a permit and a licence?
It's just language.
Language.
Just one law was written in
1800
close 1916 and the other in 1939, and they obviously decided they liked the word licence in 1913, but the word permit.
They're basically the same thing.
Yes, yeah, and we see this in other bits of licensing as well. Consent is another one. We have a third thing called a consent. So yes, good question though.
Yeah, no more questions. Thank you. Right. Item number 7. Oh, sorry, before we move on. Can I ask, is everybody happy to accept the policy and recommend that to the cabinet member?
Yes.
Can I have this over? Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is the work programme for the coming year. And I'd like to draw your attention to that at the bottom of the paper that we've received. Other than that, that's just to note it.
Can I just ask a question? On the November meeting at the moment, unless we get footpath, there is very little on there. So have you got any idea that there may be other things coming on the November programme or not? Because the update is what we've had today. It's the same thing, which yes, we do want, but we don't get footpath. There's very little there.
Councillor Chair.
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, well pointed out. There is a slight chance that the September revocation of our last air quality management area could move to November. We're hoping everything will be done September. We're relying on DEFRA for part of it, so that's the element there. In which case, as you've pointed out, there is nothing for November currently. I think in the last couple of years, we've redone or revised lots of our policies. So we're in a nice period now where we've got policies that are effective and they don't need looking at for the time being. But I have said to the current chair, Councillor Yates, and to you as the previous chair, if there are things the committee would like us to look at through the chair, then that's absolutely within your remit, and we can go away and.
That's why I was asking the question. You have said that before, because there is something that is burning, a burning issue, that we do ask for it to be on there. But on the other hand, if there's very little to report, that also is not a waste of time, but it's not as appropriate.
Yeah, and I would say if there was something you wanted us to look at, we wouldn't necessarily have to bring it in November. We could do it at one of the other meetings as well. So,
Councillor Salter.
Thank you. Yeah, actually at our February meeting, 3 items were suggested, shown in the minutes. The inspection and intervention of private sector rented tenant enforcement, update on the efficacy of the PSPO on dog control, and update on the gambling policy. And that one in particular is ringing bells at the moment because, of course, we've got in the news, the self-exclusion problems that seem to be around in the adult gaming centres. And on that particular point, I just wondered if and what the council are working towards to resolve that.
So on those 3 issues, in terms of housing, I may as well cover them all off. In terms of housing, we've obviously grown from 1 officer to almost 3 officers doing private sector housing. So that started the 1st of April. In terms of updating the committee on progress, there's a lot of work going on, and you may be hearing about some of it through other channels. But once the team is bedded in and we're getting results to present to the committee, my plan is that we'll bring something around that. In terms of the PSPO, I think Jack presented. I think Jack was here at the last meeting, not me. So I will speak to Jack about what he undertook to deliver on that. As you'll know, the PSPOs last for 3 years. The current one we have we only have one, and that is around dog control, which I think is really important, because if we didn't have a PSPO, there'd be no offence of not picking up dog mess, which is crazy. In terms of its effectiveness, we can absolutely bring something to the committee. From my perspective, a verbal update is really easy because, for example, with the taxi update we've done today, it includes data from today. So we could absolutely do that for the committee. And then on gambling, we're waiting for some national direction on what to do with our gambling policies nationally. So I think we brought something last year to committee around the gambling policy, and what we're expecting within, I think it probably be now within the next 6 months, we should have some direction on what we should be doing around our gambling policy. The gambling stuff is quite interesting. It is very much self-regulating. Talking about things like slot machines, because we don't have casinos in Lichfield yet. But it is at the lower end of gambling. But as you said, it is a really important issue and has so many links to other things that it is something we want to get right. So once we're in a position to do that, we will have a new gambling policy at some point, which will obviously come to the committee.
Can you just, on the dog situation, can you just update us on our situation in respect of wardens?
Yeah.
What have we got? Who have we got?
None. In terms of dog wardens that collect stray dogs, or
No, enforcement office.
okay, so the way we deliver it in Lichfield, by and large, is we have two absolutely brilliant ex-police officers, Tim and Stuart. I shall name drop them. They've worked with us for a while, and we employ them on a casual basis. It's a brilliant model for doing this. Where we have complaints about things like litter and dog fouling, we've got some resource in them. We have a very small budget to be able to pay their hourly rate. We pay them the same as any other officer. We don't, you know, they're not like a consultant or something, but they are absolutely brilliant. And we'll send them out either in high-vis or plain clothes to act as a deterrent, but B, to obviously try and catch people not picking up after their dog or dropping litter. We also use them for other things. So with the Watery Lane fly tipping case, they were instrumental in a lot of that work that was done there around CCTV and taking witness statements. So that's how we deliver it here. You know, if people ask me, I always say you could give us 100 staff and they'd all be busy. You know, the work is endless. At the moment, we do a small amount of that work, very little proactive work, but where we get complaints or a substantial number of complaints, then absolutely we'll send them out. But we also rely on the public helping us. You know, often people know who it is. It makes our job a lot easier if they can say they live at this address. This is what they look like. This is the dog. This is the car registration number. Because we just go and knock on the door and deal with it that way. So hopefully that's answered that question.
Anybody? No? Okay. That's all the business completed, and I'd like to draw the meeting to a close at 12 minutes past 7. Thank you very much.